that are in attendance on via telephone conference call here. Please mute and silence all of our electronic devices. Roll call, please.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here by phone.
Straight.
Here.
Wolski.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have just two items on our agenda for our special city council meeting. Item number 3 is a resolution to address employee absences due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We do have some attached information that was both emailed out and also is sitting in front of us right now. I would look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the item.
Motion by Alderman Janser to approve.
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Discussion. Alderman Janser.
I had a question, I guess, on number F, which I think the new version that I was given answers. I guess I did have a question on number G in the conditions. It basically indicates that anybody who's caring for children who are home, which with the schools closed, obviously would be pretty much everybody who has kids. So the answer then is, okay, you have kids, you want to go home and you're going to be paid. Is that what we're saying?
So I'd look to our city attorney for just verification, then I might have a little more information on that as well.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Janser, yes, that's correct.
And Alderman Janser, been in the process now. Understandable that this wouldn't be applicable to all city employees from what I'm referring now, but been in the process over the last 2 days of setting up a special daycare for emergency and or healthcare workers, so that we're hopefully going to have that set by Monday, that they would be able to go to work as well and have a place to put their children. That is not applicable to all city employees, but given the nature of this and exploring other options from work from home, this was a very, very highly discussed issue as well through the different department heads, different department meetings, as well as kind of that we've got enough employees to be able to maintain the work here within the confines, and it's applicable only to COVID-19, and at that time would not be continuing on with policy. And I might look to Lisa if she has any more information as far as the discussion that took place with this. And good afternoon, Lisa. And this, if I'm not mistaken, was also very similar to the Bismarck and or it was Grand Forks and Fargo.
Mayor Sitma, Alderman Janser, yes, we did try to mimic or look at both of those entities with regard to when this resolution was written. So that is the same process that they're following as well.
Okay, so do we have any idea of how many of our staff have kids?
Excuse me, Mayor, Alderman Janser, we're in the process of compiling that information now.
Okay, so we don't know as of now.
That is correct.
And all the schools are shut down, so obviously that would affect everybody, correct? Who has a kid, we would assume.
Alderman Janser, I guess everybody who has a child in school, yes. Daycares, no.
Yep, same story. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Olson.
I think just out of clarification, we could probably assume that it's young children. If they're possibly older elementary if they're in that 11, 12-year-old age and above, even though they're not in school. I don't assume that their parents need to stay home and care for them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I would look to maybe the folks on teleconference here if you have any questions or comments on the resolution before us.
This is Steve here. I think it's a very good idea. It's generous. It also sets a good model for other employers. I mean, I think almost by definition, city staff are pretty essential to the life of the community.
Mr.
This
City.
is Alderman Pittner, and
Sorry.
I echo those sentiments.
And Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Alderman Janser's comments, I just wanted to mention that we intend that in the event we have to send staff home or they need to go home to care for children, that we are sending work with them. We are not just letting them go and having the day off, so to speak. We are making every attempt at this point in time to ensure that they go home with work to the greatest degree possible they can work, so that I just wanted to give you maybe some peace of mind that this isn't a carte blanche sort of attempt to, have staff go and care for children and not be responsible for work activities or assignments. So we are going through a pretty robust process of identifying who is going to be impacted by this, which positions and what technology needs are going to be required in order to allow for that. There are certain restrictions on technology and those sorts of things that we're also working on at this point in time to try to get this taken care of at that level.
Okay, thank you, that helps me.
Further questions or discussion? Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sima, thank you. Brief comment on this too. I think what we have here, given the extraordinary circumstances, is an extension of good faith. That we and our team and our employees are going to help us do what we can do while we're doing it. But in the event that there is no other option, I appreciate having this clause in the resolution.
Further discussion? Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe one other point I neglected to make, and that is that we are going to be tracking this time very specifically. So in the event we do get reimbursements through the declaration, the emergency declarations, we can apply that to the offsetting of these costs to the city.
Very good point. Thank you, sir. Further discussion? Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to be supportive. I'm looking ahead to the summer months when school is out. We move into a whole different set of circumstances, I guess. Then, and I'm not looking for any answers to that riddle right now, sir, because I know things are ever changing. But I'd be curious if, worst case scenario, obviously, if you can update us down the road, sir.
Absolutely, Alderman Straight. And even with the temporary emergency childcare situation that we're standing up, we realize that we made the best plan that we could for today. Tomorrow could be different. And we would expect, even with this planning that we have, it's a 2-week scenario right now. So that's only as far as we're kind of anticipating, just because this does evolve so quickly. But very good point that we will continue to be very mindful as time ticks away and things evolve. Ms. Hendershot.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, one thing that the council might want to consider adding to the resolution is making it retroactive from Monday, the 16th, just so that we have one consistent policy in place for all of the leave related to COVID-19. And
Okay.
I can add that provision if the council deems that appropriate.
That is a very good point through this, and that would also come into impact on the declaration itself in case, in the event that we are able to get some of those costs back in that emergency declaration. Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, as the motion maker, I would approve of that addition.
Does a second agree?
As would I.
Okay. Any further discussion? So the motion is before us for the resolution that is retroactive back to Monday. And any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson. Yes. Pittner,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. That is approved. That takes us to number 4, the only other item on our agenda. Consider an ordinance on first reading relating to disasters and emergencies. This was also attached and was emailed out to all of the aldermen. Essentially, with this ordinance, hearkening back to post-2011, this would give some greater emergency-only powers to the mayor to make some of these decisions without having to call a special emergency council meeting each and every time. If you do remember back, just post-flood 2011, that this was brought once before the city council at that time and was not approved. I don't recall all of the great details. However, it was, I believe, put before the council at that time, and there was a little bit of pressure put on through the media as being a little too far and overreaching. However, as we've seen, as this particular disaster with pandemic has evolved, there's certainly the opportunity to move perhaps more expediently on some things, but very cautiously at the same time. So I would look to the city council for comments, concerns, and again, this would be first reading. We would need a motion, though, too, before.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Walsky. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Alderman Olson.
Mr. Mayor, would you anticipate that you would be informing the council once you had made some of those decisions?
Absolutely. The point that I would hope not only me in this position and any mayor following on natural disasters is the government body, of course, being exceptionally important in all of the information and decisions, perhaps on some of that isn't perhaps necessarily obvious to everyone. So I think that is the key and critical aspect through the leadership body on every aspect, is to be informed, and that way as constituents continue to reach out and we come back for other meetings that certainly would require substantial changes, that everyone is informed to the best of everyone's ability as things evolve. But I think one of the big differences that we've seen here between this and 2011 is this literally does change moment to moment, given the pandemic situation, and not to say that the flood wasn't a very fast-moving and evolving natural disaster, but this one certainly does require, I think, more expediency. And given most of what we'd be looking at for changes is operationally, considering this piece. We're taking most of our directions, as we've said many times, from the North Dakota Department of Health and First District Health Unit in many of those aspects. Other questions or discussion? Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at number 23, for example, isolation, quarantine, or segregation of persons. Clearly, we're putting a lot of trust back on the residents of Minot, trying to lead by example and do what we can, but we also simultaneously are having an incredible economic challenge in the country. As I had emailed you, Mr. Barry, yesterday, it seems trivial, but we have downtown merchants, for example, that are looking for parking in front of their businesses to help with a pickup situation. And so I trust you, sir, in making those decisions. Clearly, yeah, it's an ordinance change in some respects if necessary, but you've been elected. I trust you in making some of these where we don't necessarily have to come together. And so I'm fully supportive of this because, as you had mentioned, every day is a little different, tomorrow, next week, and I think as a result, we'll just have to reinvestigate it again down the road.
And certainly I would hope that whether it be me or others, if it was a big enough decision that did warrant putting the full body before for a decision, that it would be called for just that. Alderman Walsky.
Mayor Sitma, I have some very brief comments here. You've spoke to some of this already, but I'm gonna say it just for the narrative that I've scripted out here briefly. But in exercising this authority, I would ask that as much as possible, you engage the council where legal and appropriate, and other diverse perspectives from the community. But make no mistake, my directive to both you and Mr. Barry is move fast, move first, move aggressively, and move without regret in this situation. I will not second guess you and push back on any of the difficult decisions you have to make. And for those that do, I will push back against them. Right now, as I see it, our mission here is to save lives, and I don't want any of us at any point to look back and say something like, if only. I think that's the critical message from me today. With that, I'm going to stay out of everybody's way. And if there is anything you need from me, ask. I will be social distancing and self-isolating as requested by our public health officials. But again, if there is anything you need from me, just please ask.
Any further questions or discussion? And I would look to our folks on the teleconference as well here.
Yeah, this is Steve. Just want to make a couple of brief comments. I think that this is warranted given the nature of the emergency, but for the record, I just want to note that I have some reservations about the limitations of people's civil rights in an emergency situation like we have now that may be warranted. But as very much a civil rights supporter and a libertarian at heart, I have to point that out. This is a big deal. I would also encourage the mayor and/or the city manager to consult, with at least one other alderman about major decisions. Sometimes flying it by someone else reveals something that you hadn't thought of before. I don't know that we need to convene a meeting of the council for every decision. Not at all. Like Josh said, I trust the mayor. But I think another pair of eyes, another pair of ears can be helpful, particularly because the powers here are so sweeping. I also want to point out that the procedures here about continuity of government are something that I've been concerned about for many years, and I'm glad to see them finally being put into place. We need to have flexibility if parts of the community need to be evacuated or buildings need to be abandoned or something like that. So I'm very, very pleased that we're enacting those parts of this ordinance now. I think we need them or may need them, but I think for the future it's important the city be able to function, the state government be able to function regardless of what emergency measures we have to take. So I will certainly be supporting this.
This is Alderman Pittner. I will weigh in on this as well. I echo Alderman Padrigula's comments that I think when able to give another pair of eyes on any decision prior to being made, again, just put another set of eyes on something before we move through with something, if possible. But again, time is of the essence with many of the hurdles that we're facing with something like this. I would maybe look to City Attorney Hendershot. Is this type of ordinance something that we can put a life on, make it effective for or during the duration of this pandemic, of this item, and then if we face a flood in the future, just to maybe put at ease some of the concerns that Alderman Padrigula had stated, giving up maybe too much power to an individual or to the mayor, or maybe some of the pushback that was seen when this was brought before the council before.
Ms. Hendershot.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Pittner, I think that you could put an expiration date on it. However, the city council, after approving this on second reading, it would become effective. And then the city council would always have the authority to make changes to it, to repeal it, or to do anything with that. And it also should be noted that although there is a long list of powers within that, if it goes beyond 30 days, the emergency declaration declared by the mayor, it requires city council approval. And so there are some limitations within the ordinance that require city council action. So if that provides any reassurance to the city council, I just wanted to provide that information.
Thank you, Ms. Hendershot. And to even echo what Alderman Padrigula had stated himself, because I don't look at this just even in my role, but maybe future roles if we get when we get through this and whatever would come down the road, that there are some of these as well that I look at as very serious questions that I would have in regards to overriding authority on some civil liberties, including number 2. I'm a very strong Second Amendment supporter, exceptionally strong, and I would always feel very cautious for anyone else to go down that road. But there again, we can't always look down the road and have a crystal ball of what would, in that regard, potentially have a need for that type of issue. Ms. Hendershot, you look like you had a question or a comment.
Mr. Mayor, just one comment. I just wanted to make sure that it's completely understood that these authorities are only available to the mayor after he or she has declared an emergency, and there are references to state law too that have explanations of what that can be, and it's also defined in the ordinance. So they're specific to during those time periods, which are also limited until council action or without council action. So just so that's crystal clear, that these aren't authorities that the mayor would have at any time for any reason.
Thank you, Kelly, for exactly that. Any other questions or comments? And for just one quick reference, we are going to have a second reading on this to become intact, and at that time, we will likely have another administrative approval that we're going to have to task, that I was discussing with Ms. Hendershot, that otherwise could typically be handled in front office, but under current ordinance, we have to have a council meeting to pass, and this is in regard to helping businesses stay open and evolve a little bit during this crisis. So look for that at the same time of this second reading. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none and hearing none, let's call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That is the end of our agenda for the regular, or for the special city council meeting. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion by Alderman Janser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.
Hey Minot, 2020 is the year for more. Yes, it's the U.S. Census season, and with it, Minot could see more. More opportunities for business, more federal funding for roads, for our schools, and for our community. Take part in something more. Take the census, because for us, more means more. Visit minotnd.org to learn more.